Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. We're going to just do a quick run on the big blockbuster news. Stefon Diggs is headed to the Houston Texans from Buffalo. Genoa, first up, how you doing? And then let's dive into this trade.
Yo, Dewey Nation. I should be wearing my Texans cap right now. Justin, I'm so happy to be a Texans fan. We now have another target for our new star quarterback, CJ Stroud. Just this is so exciting. And I'm so excited to dig down into this more.
Dude,
This.
there's so many levels to this trade. Just the impacts on both sides of both teams.
Yep.
Let's dive into the team that is receiving Stephon Diggs, a team that is already winning the offseason. Then they come now and they have arguably the best trio in the NFL at wide receiver: Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Obviously, they got C.J. Stroud and newly acquired running back Joe Mixon. Genoa, tell me, how are these three receivers going to coexist in this offense?
Well, they're going to get along well, Justin. When you look at Tank Dell, first of all, he's coming off that injury. He should be 100% going into week one. But the Texans are going to need another guy to fill in that hole off the back week one. If the Texans, possibly there's rumors that they start off the season in Kansas City. They could be, maybe starting off in, I believe, maybe in Dallas. They have a pretty tough schedule. So they're going to need off the bat a receiver to get CJ Stroud going, to get, Joe Mixon getting along with that new offense. For Mixon. And I do love Nico Collins. He had a great, fantastic end of the year, helping the Texans win the AFC South division. And he was so key in that game against Indianapolis in that last, regular season game of the year. And so he's going to be a number one. You have him and Diggs kind of going one-on-one, and kind of like Tank kind of, reaching his way back to number one status, Justin. So it works for all receivers. There's going to be different games throughout the year where it's all Diggs, nothing much from Nico, or all Tank and Diggs, or nothing much from, whoever. It could be a Schultz game. So it's very exciting now if you're a Texans fan. And not only that, if you're a big, fantasy guy and you love CJ Stroud, this is going to develop this offense real well. And Justin, it's going to be kind of like, those, old, Tom Brady offenses in New England where you had pretty much anybody to go to, Justin. So it's going to be interesting. I do think the Texans should add just a little bit more talent. But I do like Mechie. You do get Noah Brown back. So, I mean, hey, CJ Stroud is looking like a top three, top five fantasy quarterback and a potential, MVP candidate.
No, yeah, I was looking at the new updated MVP odds, and he
Mhm.
jumps to the fourth highest. And in all honesty, I think he should be second. He was behind
Yeah.
guys like Mahomes, yes, Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, the two guys behind him. And I guess you maybe look at it and you're like, well, Burrow, I don't know why Burrow's up there. Allen played well, and like, why not Lamar up there? Lamar's right
Yeah.
behind CJ now, but
Yeah.
very interesting moves. Obviously, CJ is the biggest fantasy winner in my opinion. And I like what you mentioned, though. The receiver game might be a little more hit or miss. So you'll have those games. Nico's a big beneficiary. Then it's Diggs. Then it's Dell. Maybe a couple. And then obviously Schultz has to get his from time to time. I do think this trade also helps Joe Mixon a lot.
Mhm.
They're going to be, he'll never have a stacked box in his life as a Texan. And he'll get a lot of open lanes, hopefully. Their O-line is still somewhat of a work in progress, but those three receivers, let me get your take on how you're going to rank them. I know they're all top 30, probably top 25 guys now, but are they climbing up to be a third rounder? Or are they going to drop now to all kind of around the fourth, fifth, or what?
Okay, so here's how I break it down. First of all, you have to look at this. Nico Collins now has the most rapport with CJ Stroud. He ended the season healthy, had some big games, pretty much was the number one guy. Even when Tank Dell was there, it looked like Nico was just the guy. So I'm going to go ahead and say Nico Collins is a third or fourth round. If you get your receiver, running back receiver, maybe you get a Laporta second round with the running back, and now you have, a number one receiver with Nico, or there's many different options. So maybe a third or fourth with Nico. Diggs is kind of like just the way he ended in Buffalo last year. You're not really sure what you're going to get from Diggs. You're not sure if he's declining as a talent. So I'm going to go ahead and say a mid fourth to end, but the top of the fifth round. I think like the top of the fifth round, people are going to see, Stefon Diggs. He's getting passes, thrown to by CJ Stroud. Let's go ahead and take him. For sure, Justin, by the fifth round, Diggs is picked. With Tank Dell, I'm going to go ahead and say seventh just because he's injured. Schultz will also go in there. So you're talking about three pass catchers already being taken from the Texans in the first 5 to 6 rounds before Tank Dell's even thought of. So it's going to be very interesting as well. You mentioned Joe Mixon; he's going to be picked. So four Texans offensive playmakers, not including C.J. Stroud, is going to be picked in the first 5 rounds. And Tank probably won't even be one of them just because he's injured. But I do think Diggs, even in a 12-team format, Justin Diggs could even go third or fourth just because of the name value and who's throwing passes to him.
And the news that came out, I believe yesterday, was it today? Maybe
Yeah,
Stefon Diggs. He gets dealt to Houston. He's got 4 years left on his contract, and they wash out the last three because he had no guarantees in the contract. So he's playing on a 1 year deal, which totally works out for the Texans. To explain it more, like if he does really well, he obviously will become a free agent and try to get paid when he's 32, which he probably won't be able to command, star money since he'll be
yeah,
32 years of age. But a cool thing is if the Texans decide to let him walk next free agency, they get a compensatory pick for it,
yeah,
which could probably be a third or fourth rounder. So this just seems like a big win for the Texans. On the flip side, the Bills, they're looking very depleted. Obviously, in the wide receiver free agency, we talked about Curtis Samuel as a new Buffalo Bill. They also have Mac Hollins, and they still have Khalil Shakir, and of course the two tight ends. But it does not look pretty, in this receiver group. I will offer the fact that they did make a run in the back half of the year, and
hmm
obviously there was games where Gabe Davis was a no-show. Stefon Diggs, really fell off. So it looks ugly now, and I'm almost 100% certain that they're going to get a guy with that 28th pick, or they'll move up
yeah.
for a guy like a Brian Thomas or something like that. Uh, but one of those guys are going to step up. I'm really high on Curtis Samuel nowadays,
hmm
and whoever that rookie is. If it's Brian Thomas, he might be. I mean, he's going to jump up right into top five in like a QB1 dynasty format.
Yeah.
Rookie draft. So Buffalo, this obviously not their final roster, but Genoa with Josh Allen not having his top two guys from last year, is he falling in the rankings, or is he still got what it takes to be a QB1?
No, here's the thing, Justin. With Josh Allen, he is a top three quarterback. His ability to rush out the pocket and gain more yards. I mean, his rack is unbelievable, Justin. He's a big guy and he has a pretty great arm. And you mentioned a really good point, Justin. The back half of the season, the Bills made a run. I remember they had that devastating loss on Monday night to Denver and was looking kind of, blurry. We weren't sure if Buffalo was going to make the playoffs. They make a run, Justin. They had that dominant victory home against the Cowboys when they were hot.
Yeah.
And then they end the season off, beating the brakes out of Miami to win the division title. Miami was pretty much ahead most of the year with their pretty dynamic offense, Justin. But you mentioned Josh Allen was able to win those games without really the help of Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs. It was guys like Shakir. I know Dawson Knox made a comeback, and Kincaid, stepped up to the plate. So now this holds a sense of optimism for the Bills. It's not over. They did get rid of a lot of defensive talent to clear
Yeah.
cap space. And now they get rid of their two, leading receivers in the last 4 to 5 years that were pretty, leading their playoff teams. And now it's time to look forward. Now you mentioned where they're picking. I do think it's time to pretty much trade down a little bit, Justin, and stack our receivers. I trust the Bills to be pretty good defensively. So if I'm them, I'm going off the bat, I'm getting receiver in the first 3 rounds because you have James Cook out of the backfield who can catch. You do have Shakur and Curtis Samuel, who now his stock is rising, Justin.
Yeah.
But they do need a receiver. I mean, maybe they can land Worthy or maybe go like you
AD
mentioned
Mitchell.
Brian Thomas, yeah, AD Mitchell, and then maybe Keon Coleman Justin is falling down. The rankings. No one's really talking about him, so maybe you can get those guys, Justin. I would love in the third round maybe for a Troy Franklin to be
Yeah.
kind of like that speedy guy for Josh Allen, and then maybe get like a powerful guy, kind of like a Brian Thomas, or maybe Science. There's someone out there you can always get. But I do think Justin, they're going to need to get a receiver in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, so I mean, I was looking at their draft picks. They have one in the first, they have one in the second, and no third rounder.
Mm,
Uh, And so those first, I love the idea of stacking wide receiver. We'll see how much they value or how much they think they're
Mhm.
lacking in the receiver room. But definitely one out of those 2 rounds. If they don't come out with one, I'll be worried about the Bills as a whole.
Yeah.
Josh Allen still has that fantasy value, as you were mentioning. Top 3, definitely top 5, with that rushing upside and the
Mhm.
fact that he's got a cannon. So I guess how we can finish this off is let's look at the teams in their entirety. Since we're sticking on, let's talk about the Bills. Where do they kind of rank now in the AFC East? And what do you think about their playoff chances?
Well, I'm not going to say no playoffs. I think they're a team that sneaking gets in at the end. As far as division now, Justin, I'm unsure because now you look at what the Jets potentially have. They're making some moves, Justin, to get Aaron Rodgers. A pretty good offense. And I do trust Robert Saleh to coach a pretty good defense that helps Aaron Rodgers win football games. And as far as the Dolphins, Justin, they're pretty much neck and neck with the Bills because Justin, as much as we don't really trust this Buffalo, pass catchers, not we do and we don't really trust Tua as far as the leader of the Dolphins.
Definitely.
So, we do trust Josh Allen and his ability to win football games and put fantasy points. But not so much that those pass catchers. But even in Miami, we love those pass catchers, Justin. We love Waddle and Tyreek Hill. But we don't really love Tua. We're iffy on them. So those to me go hand in hand. Obviously, with the Patriots, we're not really sure what they're going to get. We'll know draft night what direction they're headed. I do
Right.
like it if they get Drake May. I like Drake May in New England. Kind of think that fits
That
their
does fit pretty
scheme. Yeah, kind of like their motto. But I'm not. They're not going to make a run at the Bills, not yet, with the team that's more experienced. So I do like the Jets now, Justin. Surprisingly, to take that, I think it's the NFC East, right?
well. AFC East.
AFC East. I'm sorry. Yes, AFC East. That's going to be a pretty close division, depending on the health of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think it's a very close race now. And
Hmm.
last year, I mean, I think it's kind of a fall though, because the Dolphins have fell off a little bit this
Yeah.
offseason. And then obviously the Jets look really ugly, but they get Rodgers back. But we
Hmm.
still don't love Nathaniel Hackett's play calling on the
Yeah.
offense. Mike Williams is coming in with an ACL injury. Who knows how much of an impact he'll make, especially
Hmm.
early on. And then with the Bills losing all their receivers and the Patriots are still waiting on which quarterback is going to lead their team. And they have so many other needs. So it's all kind of close. I think the Bills, I agree, kind of pushing to that. They probably won't win the division, but they'll be maybe a 6 or 7
Hmm.
seed. But I'm a little bit worried. And I will offer this point though. Curtis Samuel had his career season in his last year in Carolina. Obviously, then he got the bag and went to Washington. His offensive
Yeah.
coordinator, when he had his best season in the NFL, was Joe Brady, who is the Bills' offensive coordinator. So if they can scheme things up there, um,
Yeah.
I do remember though in Joe Brady's time in Carolina, things kind of fell apart. But he's also part.
Mm.
He was also part of a poor franchise
Mhm.
in the Panthers at the time. So there's ups and downs with it. Obviously, I think we're kind of on the same wavelength that they're kind of gonna medal around the 6-7 seed, but they could barely miss out if a couple things don't go their way or injuries plague their team again this year. But then flip side of the best of the news, the Texans now with just an absolutely phenomenal offensive setup. Their defense is pretty solid, but they're coached by D'Amico Ryans. Obviously, I think the draft they're gonna focus on defense just about everywhere. Maybe some O line talk, but all the skill position players are set. But they jump up into the I would argue top 3 teams in the AFC hands down.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, what are your thoughts? You think they run away with the division? I think they still got a good division. And then how about the AFC and maybe Super Bowl odds?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Justin. Here's to break it down. To answer the first question, I think in the AFC, I'm going to agree with you. The third, I do like Kansas City to be number one. We'll get to them here later in our predictions. But also, I do like Baltimore to come back stronger than ever. I do think Lamar with Derrick Henry, they're back in it. So Texans are now the third. They go over a spot over Buffalo, as Buffalo kind of was last year going into the season. And then in the division, Justin, I'm not going to ever underestimate Indianapolis. This is a tough team coached by a tough, young head coach, uprising in the rankings as a head coach. Shane Steichen's going to have this team ready to go. I do like Anthony Richardson. After 4 to 5 games he played, I'm a believer. I'm a believer in this guy. He's going
Me
to be
too.
great
Yeah.
fantasy. He is going to be winning games, tough games for the Colts. He's just going to be that gritty guy that keeps the Colts, year in and year out. And starting this upcoming year, he's going to be leading the Colts to many, tough wins. I think the Colts are going to have many slow starts, and I think Anthony Richardson's going to be that guy that's going to get him out and win them really tough football games, which worries me as a Texans fan, Justin. So
Yeah.
I do think they're tied for number one at the AFC. And I do want to say now that the Colts are kind of maybe a top 5 team in the AFC. The Chargers are going downhill. We're not sure what the Raiders are doing. And, we'll get to Cincinnati later. I do like the Colts now as a top 5 team. Maybe Pittsburgh makes a run. But I do like the Texans third in the AFC and tied with number one going back and forth with Indianapolis. But I don't want to sleep on Tennessee in that division because I do like what they did in this offseason. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what goes down.
Yeah, that's the hard thing is like the AFC South is no longer there's no like bottom barrel teams like,
Yeah.
you know, the Panthers or the Commanders. Like all
No.
these teams I think will compete week in and week out and no game will be a freebie for Houston even though they have a really good roster now.
Mhm.
But yeah, wow. The fallout of Stefon Diggs' move is a very shocking one. I know I got it right at work, and I
Yeah.
went straight to my coworker, and we were like freaking out. He's a Patriots fan, so he was really happy that Diggs is no longer in that division.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, phenomenal for the Texans. Another great move on a just adding on top of a amazing offseason for them so far. And we still got the draft ahead where they got 2 second rounders. And then we'll see if Buffalo can turn it around. But 2 separate sides of the story. I think the trade still was pretty good for either side because we know that Diggs's time in Buffalo was kind of it was exhausting for
Yeah.
both sides, and so it was time to move on. And yeah, now he's a Texan. He's wearing number 1. Paid 100 bands for it, but worth it getting that number
Yeah.
1, which he wore in college. So yeah, all right. So we actually have a full episode that we're about to fully set in, but we wanted to discuss this one because it takes a lot to cover this big move and
Yeah.
what it'll mean for fantasy, what it'll mean for both teams and the entire NFL landscape because it affects it all. So yeah, we'll be right back. We're gonna end this episode and we're gonna start our bold predictions and Super Bowl predictions episode. Yeah, stay tuned. All right. Peace out, everybody, and we'll see you in a
Peace.
second.